A rookie cop arrests a 9-year-old black girl, convinced she's a threat, only to realize minutes later that she's the daughter of the police chief. But when an emergency call forces him to leave her locked in his squad car, he makes the biggest mistake of his career. Now, with the chief demanding answers and the community watching, how will he face the consequences of his actions? Will he learn from his mistake, or is it too late to undo the damage? Stay tuned to find out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment, letting us know where you're watching from. Police car on fire. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over Oakwood Heights, a quiet suburban neighborhood lined with neatly trimmed lawns and charming 2-story houses. Aaliyah Carter, a 9-year-old girl with neatly braided hair, was playing basketball in her driveway with her 2 best friends, Emma, a blonde girl with bright blue eyes, and Carlos, a quick-footed boy with curly brown hair. "You can't beat me, Aaliyah." Emma laughed as she stretched her arms wide, trying to block Aaliyah's shot. "Just wait, I'm about to score." Aaliyah grinned, leaping into the air. She flicked her wrist, sending the basketball soaring toward the hoop. The ball bounced off the rim, circled once, and finally dropped through the net. "Yeah, score," Aaliyah cheered, high-fiving Carlos. Just then, a white and blue police cruiser rolled slowly down the street. Behind the wheel sat Officer Brian Keller, a newly transferred cop, still trying to familiarize himself with the neighborhood. As he glanced out the window, his eyes landed on the group of kids. His gaze narrowed when he saw Aaliyah sprinting across the sidewalk to retrieve the ball that had bounced away. "That black kid looks suspicious, don't you think?" Keller muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. Reports of recent vandalism in the area had put him on edge, making him hyper-vigilant about anything that seemed out of place. Without a second thought, he flipped on his cruiser's lights, pushed open the door, and stepped out. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" His voice was firm, cutting through the crisp afternoon air. Aaliyah froze, her wide brown eyes filling with confusion as she turned toward the officer now striding in her direction. "What? I'm just playing," she stammered, instinctively taking a step back. Emma and Carlos exchanged nervous glances, their stomachs twisting with unease. Something about this didn't feel right. Aaliyah's heart pounded in her chest as Officer Keller marched toward her, his uniform stiff, his boots crunching against the pavement. She had never been in trouble before, never even spoken to a police officer up close like this. Her hands felt clammy, and she instinctively clutched the basketball tighter against her stomach. "What do you think you're doing?" Keller demanded, his voice edged with authority. Aaliyah blinked, confused. "Playing basketball?" Keller's expression remained stern. "You were running, looking around like you were up to something. I've had reports of vandalism in this neighborhood. Kids breaking windows, spray painting fences. You match the description." Carlos stepped forward, his face flushed with nervousness. "Officer, that's not true. We were just playing, I swear. Aaliyah was just getting the ball. She didn't do anything." Emma chimed in, her voice cracking with worry. "She's our friend. We've been out here the whole time." But Keller wasn't listening. His gaze stayed locked on Aaliyah, his suspicion outweighing the reality before him. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Aaliyah's breath hitched. What?" Before she could process what was happening, Keller grabbed her wrist, spinning her around with unnecessary force. "Stop resisting," he snapped, as she yelped in pain, her tiny arms twisted behind her back. Tears welled up in her eyes as the cool metal of handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Carlos and Emma gasped in horror. "She didn't do anything. Let her go," Emma screamed, trying to grab Aaliyah's arm. But Keller stepped between them. "Step back, both of you. I won't tell you again." Aaliyah sobbed, her breath shaky as she struggled to understand. Just minutes ago, she was laughing with her friends, playing a simple game of basketball. Now she was being treated like a criminal. Keller guided her toward his police car, his grip firm. "We're going to have a little talk at the station." Aaliyah shook her head frantically. "No, please. I didn't do anything wrong. Please call my dad. He's a police officer too." That made Keller pause for half a second, but only half. He dismissed it, assuming she was making up an excuse. "You'll have a chance to explain yourself later. For now, quiet down." As he opened the back door of the cruiser and placed her inside, Emma and Carlos exchanged terrified glances. Then, without hesitation, they turned and ran, straight for Aaliyah's house. Keller watched them go, shaking his head. Kids these days, always causing trouble. Slamming the door shut, he turned back to his radio, ready to call dispatch. But before he could, an emergency alert blared through his speaker. 10:31, in progress, at Oakwood gas station. Armed suspect inside. Any units available, respond immediately. Keller's heart jumped. A robbery, just a few blocks away. He was the closest officer. His duty instincts kicked in, overriding any second thoughts about the little girl in his back seat. "This is Officer Keller. Responding now." Flipping on his sirens, he sped off toward the gas station, leaving Aaliyah alone in the back of his squad car, scared, confused, and crying. Emma and Carlos ran as fast as their legs could carry them, their sneakers slamming against the pavement as they rushed toward Aaliyah's house. Their lungs burned, but they didn't stop. Carlos banged on the front door, pressing the doorbell repeatedly with his shaking fingers. The door swung open, revealing Chief Darnell Carter, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a firm but kind expression. He had just returned home after a long shift, wearing his off-duty police polo. But the moment he saw the panic in the children's faces, his relaxed demeanor shifted. "Whoa, whoa. What's going on?" he asked, his deep voice calm, but edged with concern. Emma could barely get the words out. "It's Aaliyah. A cop took her. He put her in his car. He said she looked suspicious." Chief Carter's face darkened instantly, his jaw clenching. Where is she now?" Carlos pointed toward the street. "Right there. The police car." "Wait." They turned, expecting to see the parked squad car, but it was gone. The street was empty. Emma's heart dropped. He took her somewhere. Oh my God. Chief Carter didn't waste another second. He grabbed his car keys from the hook by the door, his movements swift and controlled, despite the anger boiling beneath his skin. "Get inside. Stay here. I'll find her." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. The kids watched in shock as he stormed to his police cruiser, yanked open the door, and sped off down the road. Meanwhile, Aaliyah sat in the back seat of the squad car, tears rolling down her cheeks. The metal handcuffs bit into her small wrists, and her stomach twisted in knots. She watched as the police car sped past streetlights, sirens wailing. She sniffled, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, someone come get me." Then, for the first time in her life, she felt afraid of the police. Just minutes ago, she had been playing with her friends, carefree and happy. Now she was treated like she had done something terrible. She had never felt so small. The flashing red and blue lights of the squad car illuminated the quiet streets as Officer Keller sped toward Oakwood gas station. His adrenaline surged, his fingers gripping the wheel tightly. "Dispatch. This is Officer Keller. I'm on site at Oakwood Gas. What's the status?" he barked into the radio. A voice crackled back, tense and urgent. Suspect inside, armed, possible hostages. Proceed with caution. Backup is en route. Keller's pulse quickened. He had handled small-time arrest before, but this was different, a real high-stakes situation. Gun drawn, he stepped out of his cruiser, his boots crunching against the pavement. The gas station was dimly lit, the neon open 24 hours sign flickering. Through the glass windows, he saw a masked man holding a gun, his hand gripping the store clerk by the collar. Keller took a deep breath. "Police, drop the weapon and step away," he shouted, his voice steady, at least on the surface. The suspect snapped his head around, eyes locking onto Keller. A chilling grin formed beneath his mask. Then, without warning, the man turned his gun on Keller and fired. Keller barely had time to react. He dove behind a car in the parking lot as the bullet whizzed past his head, shattering the glass door behind him. His hands shook. His breath came in short, panicked bursts. "Officer down! Shots fired!" He gasped into his radio. "I need backup now!" The radio crackled, but no immediate response came. He was alone. His mind raced. He was the one in danger now. Then, the sound of screeching tires. A black police cruiser skidded to a stop. The door flew open, and out stepped Chief Darnell Carter, his gun already drawn. "Keller, where's the suspect?" Carter demanded, crouching beside him. Keller was shaking. "Inside, armed. Almost got me." Carter's sharp eyes assessed the situation instantly, his posture exuding years of experience. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Chief Carter. We have an active shooter at Oakwood Gas. Officers need immediate backup, now." The firm command in his voice left no room for delay. Then, in one swift motion, Carter moved forward, gun steady, taking control of the situation. Keller, still panting, watched in awe. In less than a minute, Carter had flipped the balance of power, where Keller had failed. But then, Carter turned to him with a dangerous glare. "Where is my daughter?" Keller's stomach dropped at Carter's question. His hands were still trembling from the gunfire. But now, for an entirely different reason. "What?" Keller stammered, blinking up at the police chief. Carter's expression hardened, his dark eyes piercing through him like steel. "Where is my daughter?" For the first time that night, Keller felt real fear, not for his life, but for his career, his reputation. His mind raced. How had he not put it together sooner? The little black girl he had arrested, the one who kept begging for her dad. She wasn't lying. He had put the chief's daughter in cuffs. His throat went dry, his voice cracked. "Sir, I left her in the squad car. She was just a suspect." "A suspect?" Carter's voice was eerily calm, but rage boiled beneath it. "You're telling me you handcuffed my 9-year-old daughter, my baby girl, because you thought she was suspicious?" Keller's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His face turned ashen. Carter let out a sharp breath, shaking his head in disbelief. "Where's your squad car now?" That's when Keller realized his mistake had just gotten worse. His squad car wasn't here. He had left Aaliyah alone in the back seat, locked in, while he had rushed to the scene. His hands fumbled for his radio, his panic now outweighing everything else. "Dispatch, this is Officer Keller. I need an immediate status check on my squad car. Vehicle was left occupied at Oakwood Park." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Officer Keller. The vehicle is no longer at its original location." Carter's entire body went rigid. "What do you mean? It's not there." "The car's been moved, sir. We're checking traffic cameras now." Keller's vision blurred. His breath hitched. The worst realization hit both men at once. Aaliyah wasn't just alone, she was missing. Carter's voice was dangerously low. You better pray to God my daughter is safe. Then, without another word, he stormed back to his car, gripping the wheel so tight, his knuckles turned white. Keller swallowed hard, his entire body cold with dread. He had just made the worst mistake of his life. The air felt heavy, the weight of the moment pressing down, as Chief Carter stood, eyes locked on Keller. You left my daughter alone in a squad car. And now, she's missing? Carter's voice was low, controlled, but the anger beneath it was undeniable. Keller's throat went dry. He could feel his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Sir, I didn't think. Damn right you didn't think. Carter cut him off, stepping closer. You saw a black child playing outside her home, and instead of protecting her, you threw her in handcuffs like she was a criminal. Keller opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. Because Carter was right. The realization hit him like a truck. He hadn't stopped Aaliyah because she was doing anything wrong. He had stopped her because of what she looked like. The silence stretched between them, thick with tension and judgment. Around them, other officers who had arrived on the scene stood frozen, watching, listening. No one dared to interrupt. Finally, Carter spoke again, his voice measured but sharp. Tell me something, Keller. If Aaliyah had been a little blonde girl named Emily, would you have treated her the same way? Would you have thrown her in the back of your car without so much as calling her parents first? Keller's stomach twisted. His gut response was to say yes, to insist that he would have done the same thing, but he couldn't, because he knew it wasn't true. Aaliyah had been laughing, playing with her friends, just like any other kid in that neighborhood. He had ignored her tears, her pleas, all because, in his mind, she had fit some vague description of suspicious. And now, because of his reckless assumptions, she was gone. Keller took a deep breath, his voice shaky. Sir, I messed up. I swear I didn't mean to hurt her. I thought I was doing my job. Carter's eyes darkened. Your job is to serve and protect, not terrorize little girls playing basketball. Keller looked down, guilt settling in his bones. Before he could say another word, Carter turned away. I don't have time for this. I'm going to find my daughter. Keller hesitated, then took a shaky step forward. Sir, let me help. Please. Carter spun around, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. You want to help? You should have helped by not putting her in this situation in the first place. Keller swallowed hard, but stood firm. I know, and I can't take that back. But right now, we need every available officer to find her. That includes me. Carter stared at him for a long moment. Then, with a reluctant nod, he turned back to his car. Then, get in, and don't screw this up again. Keller nodded sharply. This was his chance, his only chance to make it right. The tension in the police station conference room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Officer Brian Keller sat stiffly in his chair, hands clasped together, as he faced his disciplinary review board. Across from him, Chief Darnell Carter sat with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The department captain cleared his throat. Officer Keller, after reviewing the events of last night, including the wrongful detainment of a minor, the mishandling of a police vehicle, and the failure to follow proper procedure, we have decided on disciplinary action. Keller's heart pounded. He knew what was coming. Effective immediately, you are suspended from active duty for the next 60 days. Additionally, you are required to complete extensive anti-bias training before consideration for reinstatement. Keller nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. He wanted to argue, to justify his actions, but he knew he had no defense. The captain sighed, glancing at Carter. Chief Carter, as the father of the victim, do you have anything to add? Carter leaned forward, his dark eyes fixed on Keller. I don't care about suspensions or training if you don't actually learn something from this. His voice was measured but firm. You saw my daughter and assumed the worst, not because she was doing anything wrong, but because of what she looked like. Keller's face burned with shame. I know, sir, and I regret it. Carter's stare didn't waver. Then prove it, not with words, but with actions. The captain dismissed the meeting, and one by one, the officers filed out, leaving Keller and Carter alone. After a long moment, Keller finally spoke. Sir, I know I don't deserve it, but I just want to say, I'm sorry. Not just to you, but to Aaliyah. Carter let out a slow breath, studying the younger officer. Apologies don't erase trauma, Keller. My daughter shouldn't have to be afraid of the police. She shouldn't have to learn, at 9 years old, that some officers will treat her differently just because of her skin color. Keller's chest tightened. I understand, and I swear to you I'll do better. I'll be better. Carter studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. We'll see. With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Keller alone with the weight of his choices. And for the first time, Keller understood. This wasn't just about one mistake. This was about changing everything that led him to make it. Aaliyah sat cross-legged on the living room floor, her colored pencils spread out around her. The tip of her tongue peeked out slightly as she focused on her drawing, carefully filling in the last stroke. Across from her, Chief Carter watched his daughter closely, his heart aching for what she had been through. It had been a few days since the incident, and while she had stopped crying at night, there was still a shadow in her eyes, a new awareness that he wished she never had to learn so young. He leaned forward. What are you working on, baby girl? Aaliyah held up her drawing, her expression unreadable. Carter took it gently, his breath catching in his throat. The picture showed a little black girl, standing tall, wearing a superhero cape. Her arms were crossed confidently, and above her head she had written in bold letters, I am not a threat. Carter's jaw tightened as he swallowed down a wave of emotion. His daughter had captured something so powerful, so heartbreaking in its truth. Aaliyah glanced up at him, waiting for his response. Do you like it? He pulled her into his arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I love it. And I love you, Aaliyah. No one gets to take away your light. You hear me? No one. Aaliyah nodded against his chest, her small arms wrapping around him. Do you still want to be a cop one day? He asked gently, remembering how she used to say she wanted to be just like Daddy. She was quiet for a moment, then shook her head. No. Carter's heart sank. Because of what happened. She nodded. I don't want to be scared, and I don't want other kids to be scared either. Carter exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of her words settle deep. You shouldn't have to feel that way. And I promise I'll do everything I can to change that. Aaliyah pulled away, looking up at him. Maybe I can change it too. Not as a cop, but maybe as someone who helps people in a different way. Carter smiled, brushing a curl from her face. I think whatever you do, you're going to change the world. She beamed, holding up her drawing again. Maybe I'll start with this. And as Carter looked at his daughter, strong, smart, and unbreakable, he knew that this was only the beginning of something much bigger than either of them. This story is more than just a dramatic event. It reflects real-life issues that many people, especially in communities of color, face daily. Aaliyah's experience is a powerful reminder of how racial bias, even when unintentional, can cause deep harm, especially to children. One of the biggest takeaways from this story is the responsibility of law enforcement. Officers must challenge their own biases and ensure that their actions are based on facts, not stupid assumptions. Proper training, accountability, and empathy are crucial in building trust between police and the communities they serve. For everyday people, this story teaches us to speak up when we see injustice. Emma and Carlos didn't stand by silently. They ran for help. Similarly, we must be willing to call out discrimination when we see it. For parents, it's a reminder to teach children about their rights and how to safely interact with authority figures, while also advocating for change in the systems that should be protecting them. Ultimately, change starts with awareness and action. By learning from mistakes, challenging biases, and standing up for fairness, we can create a world where every child feels safe, valued, and seen for who they truly are. Today's story is not just about one officer's mistake or a father's courage. It's a reminder that bias can have serious consequences if we don't recognize and change it. Aaliyah had to face a situation that no child should ever have to experience. So, if you were in a similar situation, treated unfairly because of someone's false assumptions, what would you do? Would you stand up for yourself and fight for justice? 1. Or would you stay silent and avoid conflict, fearing the system might not be on your side? 2. Drop a 1 or 2 in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. And if you found this content meaningful, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel and help spread awareness about important issues like this.